I've got my 2D planning in a very basic way, but enough to show you. So I want to start then working this out in 3D, particularly for the connection between things like any atriums or voids that I've got. So for that, I'm going to use massing. And you can get to that on the Massing and Site tab. And then you see all these massing tools on the left there. So I'm just going to use in-place mass. It'll give you a message. Just close that. And then you can give it a name. So I might call mine master plan. Uh, 3D, just in case I'm not sure. And so now, you can see I've got these tools up here, which might just look like 2D drawing tools, but these let you create 3D things. And if you're wondering, it's or if you're interested, it's actually the most powerful modelling tool you have in Revit. So you can do much more complex forms with this than you can using extrusions and revolves and the other things. So, but it's also a little bit fiddly when you try and do those things. So to start off with the simple shapes, which is what I'm going to be doing now, I'll just draw a rectangle. And I'm going to make sure here that the option next to that draw panel is on draw on work plane, not draw on face. And then I'm just going to draw my rectangle and go over the void. Doesn't need to be exactly the same as my area boundaries anyway. It's just rough planning. Okay, so I've got that, that rectangle, which is hard to see, but if I hover there you can see it'll come up and I can select it. And notice how when you go to select it, it comes up as one object. Yeah, yeah. And well, with a lot of the options, so if you go and draw lines, I'll just do another shape up here. So maybe I'll put in a curve or something. So yeah, let's do something here. So I'm just drawing some lines and come down to here, and then I'll go and draw an arc. Yeah, you don't want to have overlapping lines with these. You've got to be really careful. So there, I'm just going to go back to the beginning. You can, but you just got to set it up. So what you're trying to draw is closed profiles, and basically Revit's going to do a lot of the guesswork for you and try to join things together that seem like they should be connected. So here I drew these all just using the line and the arc tool, but automatically, because the ends are connected, it's joined that together as one shape. And that's really one of the big differences at first between this and the way you draw in sketch mode when you're making, say, an extrusion or anything else, or a floor. You'll get separate lines, so that line would be a shape, the arc would be a shape, everything would be separate. But with massing, it works a bit differently. So it's automatically going to join these shapes together. As long as you're aware of that, it's pretty easy to work with because it's pretty logical in the way it joins them. And if it's not joining the way you want it to, often it's easiest just to redraw the shape. So I've got my, my shapes that I want to make into a mass. But to see the mass, I'm going to make a 3D view. And so I'm going to just try and duplicate the view, and you can see there, one of these great Revit things, you don't get a lot of the options for things like view control when you're making a family or a mass. So I've just got to finish the mass, and it tells me the mass contains no solid geometry. That's fine, I know that. And then I can make my, my view. So now I can right click on that 3D view category, go to duplicate view, and then I'll just do duplicate with detailing. And then I'm going to right click on that new view and give it a new name. I'm going to call this 3D massing. Okay, and then I'm going to go into the visibility settings, and you can see that in properties, next to visibility graphics. You can just click the edit button. You might remember the shortcut is VV. And then I'm going to simply select the first category there, air terminals, scroll all the way down to the one before mass, which is lines. I'm going to hold down Shift and click to select all of those, turn them all off, and then I'll select mechanical equipment, and then scroll all the way to the bottom, select the last one, and again turn all of those off, and then I'm going to select mass, turn it on. Click OK, and now I can only see those objects, and that makes it easier to get back to them, but also I've got the view set up that I wanted to show just the massing. So now I can select that mass object and go back to edit and place to keep working with it. And so now if I select one of those shapes, this is where I think gets really interesting if you're interested in this mass modelling tool, because this tool here, Create Forms, is the only 3D tool you have, and it's all you need. It does everything. So I've selected my shape, and if I click Create Form, it'll turn it into a 3D object. I'm going to select this one too, and I'll just do the same thing. Create Form, and it's going to extrude it up. Now I can use the arrows on that gizmo, and you can actually drag them any direction. I want it to go up, but you can drag it to this way, and do lots of other things as well. Yeah, yeah. So it's much more flexible and don't want to say intuitive, but direct. Oh yeah, of course, yeah, yeah. Anything that's vertical. Yeah. Oh, of course, yeah, yeah. So yeah, anything that's rising through the building is just going to be an extrusion. That's really all I've made, and now I can just use the arrow there and stretch that up. So to bring this one up, I need to select the top. So just looking closely at this shape, unlike solids, you can select edges. So if you're too close to the edge there, it'll get just the edge, which can be useful. You can move that on its own too. But I don't want the edge, I want the whole surface, so you just need to move the cursor around and you'll see when it gives you the whole face. And now if I use that blue arrow, just stretch it up, and I'm just essentially changing the height. And so most of the things I think you'll need for a massing study in 3D should just be extrusions. Just block forms you'll do in plan and then change the height. So then the only other thing you might want is different materials or colours on these objects. So if you select, you have to select the whole thing. So if you select just by clicking, you'll only get an edge, or if you're lucky, you might get a face like this. So there's an edge, there's a face. You can actually get just a vertex, so the corner. This is something that's really hard with solids, but massing, it's easy. Do all those really tricky things. But I don't want any of those sub-elements, I want the whole thing. And unfortunately making a window isn't always an option. Here it's okay, I can make a window and that gives me the form, which is what I'm after. But the other option, if that isn't working, tab. So when I go to the edge there, I can press tab and it will eventually highlight the whole form. There we go. Actually press time, but you can always cycle and see all the options. So now I can click, and again I've got the form. Then you can see we've got a material, and I can just click there, browse, and you might have seen there are actually materials set up just for massing. So you've got these default mass materials, which basically just have transparency. So that's all I want. So I'm going to duplicate just by right-clicking. I'm going to duplicate, and we'll call this mass. Well, mass zone 1. I don't really know what it's for yet. And I'll just change the colour. we don't even need to do the appearance, so you can leave the appearance alone and just use the graphics if you want to. So I'm going to click on the colour swatch there, and let's make it just a totally different shade. And that's it. Okay. And now we'll have that shade. So again, I'll just do this one with a different material using tab to get the form. Click, find the material, and then I'll duplicate this material, and we'll just call it Mass Zone 2. And are you wondering why these colours haven't changed? Okay. Exactly, that's right. So as long as you know that, doesn't really matter. No, because we're not going to be doing any rendering for this, so don't need to use it. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. So, okay, so now I could build up a 3D model. These are from the ground floor, but I can easily go to a different level, and it can be in any plan. It doesn't need to be an area plan, so it could be in a normal floor plan. And so I might have maybe hotel rooms, actually might even start high, maybe level 2. So maybe we want to have some hotel rooms here, so that could be another mass. So that's my rectangle. Now, just to make my life easier, I'll go to the 3D massing view where I can see that by itself. Orbiting around, you can see the height more clearly. Select it, create form, turn it into a 3D object, and I can stretch it. I'll show you later how you can check the height against what you've done in your levels, but for now you can probably just do that fairly roughly. And so now I can start to see, if this was say my atrium, I can see the connections between that and my hotel rooms maybe, and so again I can give this yet another material. Okay, so you can start to build up these really interesting volumetric studies, and I think I've shown you one of the examples before. In fact, I know I have because I put it in the brief. I'll just quickly open it again anyway. What's Acrobat doing? Yeah, so that's a fairly basic one, but might give you an idea the kinds of things you can do to do all that master planning type of work. And it ties in well with functional diagrams as well. Have you done those? You know, the bubble diagrams where you work out the connections. No?
Oh, not on here.
No. Yeah, but if you've done one already, then you can look at all those functions and try and model up those forms in 3D and work out the connections across the levels as well as on each floor plate. Yeah, because you know, I mean, it's been an important thing forever since the beginning of modernism, but you know, even before then. But definitely with the beginning of modernism, they really emphasised this idea of designing in the elevation or the section as much as you design in the floor plan, and so that just really means designing in 3D and thinking about connections you can achieve vertically as well as horizontally. And so that's when this 3D massing can help you a lot. And so the last thing I'll say there with this building, I know it's not anything to do with CAD, but I would definitely be looking at those vertical connections because all tall buildings give you that opportunity. And it's amazing how often I see buildings like this done where people just leave the floors intact and don't do any vertical penetrations. And you've got so much potential for it here, it's not funny. You could do, yeah, leave the columns in and you can still do some amazing vertical penetrations and get some really interesting things there.